from you, Victoria. Great to see you again.
Good to see you too, Charlie, as always.
And you've been so important on this journey for anybody who's been watching our journeys. Connecting with our spiritual side is so important right now, especially when you're under non-disclosure agreements and there's things that you can't say. And when you know something is going on, everybody has the ability to connect within everybody. And there's a lot of people who've only just started to connect with themselves and disconnect from the matrix. And when you start to connect with yourself, the peace that you feel within and the clarity that you feel within. One of the first things I learned when you connect within was not to be afraid of making mistakes, because that's where you learn.
Right. But that's what we've been taught by society.
Correct.
And all of our systems, all of them, from religion to education to media to movies, they all tell us to look outside of ourselves for information, for happiness, for all of that. And we get to a point where we realize, oh, wait, it's all in here.
Yeah.
And then we never really needed any of those other middlemen. And so a lot of people will seek outside themselves for information. They'll go through their religion to get to God, and they'll pray, they'll ask God for answers. But the issue, Charlie, is that not very many people know how to listen.
Very
so
true.
People ask all the time, but it's listening that's difficult because they haven't been taught how to listen.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're going to educate people about listening, probably one of the first steps is to understand meditation. Because it's very easy for people to pray for something, to ask for something. I wake up every morning and give thanks for what I have. That's the first thing I do, because I'm laying next to my wife and I'm very grateful for what I have. And just saying thank you for what I have. And then during the course of the day, you pray to God for certain things. But the answer comes through meditation, through just being peaceful and connecting within. And when you start to learn how to do that, just sit peacefully, and you're right, listen and absorb. Everything comes to you. And it doesn't always come at the exact time you want it to.
Right.
Sometimes God will have his plan, which is, when you look back at it, you go, that was 100% right. But the trouble is we've lived our lives in a hurry. We want everything done yesterday, because of email, because of messenger, because of all of this. It's instant responses, instant this, instant that. We've got so used to that, rather than just being peaceful and calm and waiting for the right time. Everybody at the moment right now is, Charlie, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? We're so used to that.
Right. Well, what people don't understand is it's actually happening. So it's so funny, Charlie, that you bring up the non-disclosure, because I have a different kind of non-disclosure that I'm under. I know that you're under an NDA with regard to the prosperity programs. So as I've mentioned to you really briefly, I'm an angelic walk-in. I haven't shared that openly with very many people. And I work with other ascended masters in the angelic realm. And they've told me what they have planned, but I'm not allowed to tell anybody.
Yep. And there is times, isn't there, when you've just verbalized exactly what other people may well be feeling, that the ascended masters and God will communicate with us through different means. And he'll just say, keep that to yourself. And when you're connected, you respect that, because you regard it as a privilege to have that information.
Yeah.
You've been chosen. And every single person has that opportunity once they connect. And then it goes through different levels. I've gone through many different levels in my life of connection to truth, starting right at the very bottom. And years ago, when I thought I'd found the bottom, I realized I had a basement. and I had to go down even lower. That was tough.
No, it's funny because I talk about that too, cleaning out the basement. Oh man, that's still in there. I thought I got rid of that.
Yeah.
It comes back for another round just to see if you're finished with it or not.
Exactly. And a lot of people right now can follow Victoria and connect with her. She has her own website, which is it Victoria Reynolds?
It's victoriareynolds.com.
Yeah, that's correct. And this will help each and every one of you who don't know what's going on and can't find out what the truth is. Well, the truth is within. And this is something very different from what we've ever been educated in the past. And when you start to connect with within yourself, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It's like a baby growing, but it's very, very exciting that when you start connecting to yourself. And the old generation of born in the 30s, 40s, 50s, who weren't connected to television and so dependent on television, you'd be surprised how much further ahead they are of us than we give them credit for, because they're connected to themselves. That's the older. I love the older women in their 80s and 90s who understand what's going on, and that they'll just say the rest of this doesn't make any sense. And yet the young generation sees sense in complete chaos.
Right.
Wearing 3 masks, keeping 6 feet away. That makes sense to them. But right. to an old person who's connected to the truth within, this is your benchmark. This is your benchmark rather than what's been drummed into people.
Well, I think that's part of it, because we have been programmed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of people don't understand. It's called television programming for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because
it's programming us.
Yeah.
And that's why so few people have the ability to think for themselves, because they're and it's just drives me crazy, Charlie. I was watching something with my son a few minutes ago, and there was a commercial for a squiggly little teeny tiny baby and getting his diaper changed. It was like a cell phone holder to entertain your newborn baby while they're getting a diaper changed. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was thinking yesterday about the new world that we'll be moving into. And I see the satisfaction that Justin has when he's just playing in nature, without his mobile phone, without his iPad. And that's how I grew up. I grew up playing in nature because iPhones and iPads didn't exist.
Right.
And if you wanted to make a phone call or talk to somebody, you had to be home at 6 o'clock because the phone would ring inside the front door.
Right. Right.
And you didn't have all of these things. So you had to learn. I used to cycle. I used to be a part of a group of young boys that cycled big distances and have a bit of fun with that. And just enjoying life and being out on the farm. We had loads and loads of chickens. So looking after them was always fun, protecting them from foxes. That was an ongoing battle, non-stop. We used to do so many things, building tree houses. Nowadays, health and safety would stop you doing it.
Right. But they don't even let kids play on monkey bars anymore. They stopped that when my kids were in elementary school. The kids weren't allowed to play on the monkey bars anymore because somebody might get hurt.
Yeah.
Broken bones are a part of being a kid. It didn't prevent my son from falling and breaking his arm. He
exactly.
He still got it.
Well, I love my skiing, but I'm one of these people that doesn't like to warm up necessarily. I like to stop at the start at the top of the mountain and get the air in my lungs and go flat out from top to bottom. Many, many times I've broken arms, legs, ribs, everything, because I haven't warmed up. I've just gone flat out. But this is part of growing up. This is what happens in life. And if you wrap these kids up in cotton wool, you land up with a generation like we have right now, where they're completely woke. They're so protected from everything. They wouldn't even know where to start when it comes to connecting with themselves, because they're connected to the matrix. They're completely tied into the matrix.
You know what's funny? You bring up that word woke, because that's one of my little pet peeves.
Yeah.
So that's a term a lot of us in the awakened community used to use. And it's been, as happens, it's been hijacked. So one of the things I teach people is the dark side always takes our terms and inverts it in a way, kind of perverts it. And woke is one of those words. We should joke around about being, I'm woke-ish, because nobody's 100% awake. No one is 100% awake. We're all in various stages of awakeness. Some people have fallen back asleep. And I'm trying to wake them back up again. And that's one of those terms that kind of got taken and the meaning got twisted into something, got manipulated to mean something that it used to be a term that we were using, kind of a joke for being awakened. But now awakened used to be just about being spiritually awake. And now it's also learning about the corruption. So a lot of people who are spiritually awake have been put back to sleep by media, and they can't see the corruption. So it's really interesting to see how much the dynamics have shifted over the years. You know what's really interesting, Charlie? I'm going to start teaching a class called Dispelling the Darkness. And so I bought a couple of books so I can learn more about the Illuminati and how they work. And what I discovered is that in 2016, they had one of their they call a rebalancing that happens every time there's a full moon that coincides with the summer solstice. And that happened in 2016. That's how they energetically had planned to use that to put Clinton into office and then run their whole agenda forward. And they weren't expecting that to be disrupted. So then they had to come up with this whole Corona narrative. So I've been studying how they do this. And part of what they do is they basically create what's always being shown is they create like a mirror image. So there's side by side, there's the New Earth plan, and then there's the New World agenda. And on the surface, they look almost identical. But if you really start diving in, you see they take you into two completely different worlds. And the one that you're talking about is this New Earth. And nobody's going to miss their cell phones and their iPads and all their technology. They're just not. We don't need it. For starters, we all telepathically communicate anyway, except for 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm trying to get your attention. But the more we raise our consciousness, the more we'll be able to communicate telepathically.
Those people who've never seen Victoria and I on a show, Victoria and I came from very, very similar but different backgrounds, where we grew up in a religious cult, both of us, in different ways, different cult altogether, but the same, where we were brainwashed, indoctrinated, as they call it, if you're a Christian, and found out that what we were taught as children growing up was not the real world.
Right.
And I was 23 when I left the Plymouth Brethren and decided to try and establish my own truth, which was not easy for many, many years. I went all over the place, got myself in all kinds of trouble, and don't regret a moment of it, because that was my foundation.
Right.
And what age were you when you made your move?
17.
17, that's right. That's right.
And same kind of thing. I had never been taught the concept of actions and consequences, because God had my whole life planned out for me from the moment I was conceived. And so I had no idea how to make choices. So I did some really stupid things. Yeah. And I spent some time being homeless, and I spent some time living in my car and living on people's couches. And I finally settled down. I finally met my husband. And when I got married when I was 30, and I was with him for almost 30 years, and we just got divorced a couple of months ago. And I mean, that's there's another story there. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a walk-in.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished embodying in September 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a different kind of walk-in. So there are a lot of different kinds of walk-ins. In fact, I interviewed someone on my show, Sheila Seppi, a couple of months ago. Actually, not a couple of months, just a couple of weeks ago on my Fearless and Free TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And she was explaining to me about the different kinds of walk-ins. I didn't realize there were that many different kinds. And so the kind that I am is that I'm the higher self walked
Mm-hmm.
into this body. So my personality self is still with me. I gave her the job of Mommy Margaret. That's all that's left of my personality self name was Margaret. And I legally changed my name to Victoria. My higher self name is Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
And that my personality self had a really hard time with me walking in, even though it was a soul agreement,
Mm-hmm.
because she knew that I would not put up with being married to an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't put up with being married to an alcoholic.
Mm. Yeah, there's some tough decisions to make in life. And I think one of the most important things that I've learned is not to regret making mistakes.
Right.
You make mistakes.
Well, there really aren't any. That's
exactly.
What people understand.
Exactly.
Oh, we have our learning lessons.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. And it's very interesting on this journey as well, because we've got quite a large following now. It's interesting how many people have said, could you set up a dating site within your site for unvaccinated people? Which I thought was really sweet. And I know the team are looking at it right now, because there's it's a certain mentality as well of people that regard their body,
right.
Which is, for me to be even talking about this when I consider what I've put into my body in my lifetime, is a massive change.
Oh yeah, me too.
Exactly. But this is what it's all about. And one thing I love more than anything is that yours and my journey has been so similar, and the bumps in the road is what's created you and I.
Mm-hmm.
Not our foundations. Our foundations were flawed at the start, but we've got back to our basement, if you like, and started building and establishing truth. And the easiest way to establish truth is to disconnect from everything around you, the mainstream media, the newspapers, even social media. Just connect within.
Right.
And it's very easy to talk about connecting to Mother Earth, but the benefits of walking bare feet, connected to the ground, connected to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I always used to think people were mad that talked about hugging a tree. But it's very interesting when we talk to people like Didi Panasar. She will hug a tree, and she'll get Justin to hug a tree so that she can communicate with him. They act like an antenna. And he receives messages from her, and that was new to me. But the one thing is now that I've opened up from within. I've opened up to receive what's good. Now, the other thing is I always talk about resetting your moral compass, because every single day, if you open yourself up, something will try and fly in that's not good. And it's done in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And at first glance, it's not always bad. What you said earlier as well is important, because I've said right from the start that I was blessed to be working on the quantum financial system, which is the global financial reset.
Right. Not to be confused with the
Great Reset.
With the Great Reset. That's why I was saying how they use words that are almost exactly the same, which
exactly.
is really, really clear to decipher the difference.
Yeah.
The global currency reset is very different from the global financial reset.
Yeah, or they call it the Great Reset.
Or the Great Reset.
Exactly right. And they've done it on purpose to deceive.
Mm-hmm.
and once you connect with yourself within, you will see it. And it's very interesting. The ones that there's people that are stuck in the fourth dimension who will pick holes in it and go, well, you're talking about the Klaus Schwab reset. No, I'm not. I'm talking about a different reset. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that when I started this journey back in March 2020, when I started doing my videos, I didn't know at that stage that there was 2 resets in play. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you right now that the convoys that started in Canada, that will happen in America, that are happening in Europe, that are happening in the UK, was the plan of the bad guys to take down the governments. This was all their plan, to take down every government so that we would come to their way of thinking and having a one world government that was coming to save us. And that's not going to happen.
No.
Because we're going to move into Nasara Jasara and the quantum financial system. And this has been a war.
What happened with that is, so one of the things that was being shown in the beginning of 2020 is that light can work wonders under the cover of darkness. Mm-hmm. So they allow the darkness to do what it does, as in the lockdown, but it keeps backfiring on the dark side because there's so much light here. So during the 2020 lockdown, they expected people to get really depressed and upset and rely on the system. But that's when there was a mass awakening because people were at home. What I started getting even before people were locked up, I knew it was coming. And the message I kept getting was to be still and know that I am. Mm-hmm. So I knew that people were going to go inside and be still and get in touch with themselves. Mm-hmm. And a whole lot of people woke up during the lockdown, which was exactly the opposite of what the dark side wanted to have happen. And I recognize that immediately with what's happening with the trucker convoy. That was intended to break down the system, right? So people can't get their food, people can't get their orders, right? But what it's doing is it's rallying people all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's what it's turning into is it's rallying people to understand that we are the ones we've been waiting for. And I've been saying that for months, and people are finally got it. Oh, we're it. Mm-hmm. And they didn't realize there was going to be so much love and so much enthusiasm rallying around these truckers that it's turned into this glorious, peaceful movement.
Well, this is where the chief of police in Ottawa had come out and made a public statement to say that the mainstream media are lying to you because there has been no violence. Mm-hmm. Everything has been peaceful, and on top of that, they've been cleaning up the place. So they haven't made a mess, but they've been helping the locals clean up. And that's the mainstream media was saying they were causing riots and there was fights and there was all this, that, and the other. That was all a lie. And the chief of police, thank God, came out and said that the media are lying to you. This is peaceful. There hasn't been a single problem. There's not been a single arrest. There hasn't been a single confrontation. Nothing. But the media created a complete lie with fake pictures, fake stories, because they wanted chaos. That's what they wanted. And
they're not getting it.
They're not
getting what. And we even saw the post that said, if you see anybody dropping bricks off, make sure you get pictures of them, get their license plate number, right? And get their name. And that if anybody does cause trouble, there was one video of someone trying to cause trouble and they ran him off. Yeah. I was like, we're not going to put up with your crap here. Sure. And I've seen videos of the guy shoveling the snow off the streets.
Correct.
And it's just, and dancing and singing, and it's just turned into this extraordinary celebration of freedom for humanity. And that is not what the dark side had planned. They keep getting tripped up.
Well, 6 months ago, I was asked many, many, many times about food shortages, and I didn't see it. I didn't feel it 6 months ago. But if you've got 100,000 truckers heading down in a protest, there's a fairly good chance that their normal job would be transporting food. Mm-hmm. And people say, so now we could come into a food shortage. And I said, yes, we could very easily come into a food shortage. But the food shortage for a month or so will be worth its weight in gold.
Right.
Because it will have broken the power of Satan, broken the matrix.
Yeah, it will have broken their system. And so what's really interesting about this, what I was being shown, is it's really showing people who's really in charge of distribution. The cabal wants to think they're in charge of distribution. And I hate to break it to you guys, but you're really not. The people in charge of distribution are the truck drivers.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right. And what's happening?
They could unload their trucks and feed people with the food they're carrying in their trucks.
Of course they could.
Right? So they're really the ones that are in charge of whether people get fed or not. And I, you know what, I'm not worried about it. I think there are a lot of us who have been told have 3 to 4 weeks worth of food. And I started doing that a couple of months ago, just in case. And so I did a video about this a couple of days ago. Yeah, to go out and make sure you have a couple of weeks worth of food. But the storehouses are full. There's more than enough food. And there's already a plan in place to feed people.
Yeah. The one thing that's, I think, is beautiful is the fact that there's not many truckers, if any, that have a degree, but they have a mountain of common sense. And that's what you need right now, a mountain of common sense. A degree is not going to save you in this. No. It's not going to do any good for you at all, unless that degree is in biology, to understand that we've been lied to something rotten. And for those good doctors and nurses who've exposed it, I thank you. And that's using your knowledge to good effect. But no, the truckers out there, they've got a mountain of common sense. They understand what's true and what's not true. And I've used the example of the older woman, the mother, the grandmother, to help you reset your moral compass, to help you to understand what's right and wrong. I pointed out the other day, Victoria, there's a beautiful song on YouTube that's been put together with a group of girls on a Zoom. And this, first of all, it made me angry because the name of the song it keeps coming up online, is called, and it's a beautiful piece of music and harmony. Here we go. Love on Top, performed by the Pitch Perfect cast. And it's absolutely beautiful piece of music. And then when you scroll down, you see it's promoting UNICEF. And you realize that that's one of the largest child trafficking groups in the world. And this is how Satan works. He lures you in with a beautiful piece of music, with beautiful girls. And then you suddenly, the link is to take you to UNICEF. Right. UNICEF have promoted it. Because they're under huge pressure now because they're getting exposed and they don't like it. I've exposed them and the Red Cross and a number of these that are pretending to help people and are doing exactly the opposite. And I was talking yesterday to somebody, I forget who it was, especially for people like you and I who were born in a religious cult and then went our own ways and have come back to God later on in life. It was very interesting. For the last 30 years of Mother Teresa's life, or as he referred to her, Teresa, she lost her faith in God 30 years before she died.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. And he's done a huge amount of study into her. And she was worshipping Satan for the last 30 years of her life. It's very interesting. I've never worshipped Satan, and I've never crossed over to that side. I just lost my contact with God. Right. And I just went my own way, and just muddled through life, if you like. But there's a lot of...
This is the same kind of thing. I mean, I lost my connection too with God, with Source, but I went more just atheist. I didn't believe in Satan. I thought religion made Satan up to scare kids. I was like, yeah, religion made all that stuff up to keep human beings under control. I thought that for years. I actually thought that until 2012, that the darkness wasn't real, Satan wasn't real, religion made all that up to control people. And then I actually saw his spaceships.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is real.
Yeah.
They call him the Dark Overlord. And whole fleet of ships. And I had that's actually when I realized that these stories are actually based in truth.
Yeah. No, very, very much so. And it's, I think one of my biggest things that I started to grow with my connection with my creator, with God, with source, was instead of looking up into space, looking within, bowing your head to look within, and finding that the connection was in here. And it's in a few songs that heaven is a place on earth. And that's within. Heaven can be within you. God can be within you. And when the peace that you find when you connect with your spiritual side, which is in every single one of you, once you connect to that, and people like Victoria can help you do that, to connect with yourself, connect with your higher self, and then allow your spirit to open up.
Yeah. You know, and a lot of people have misunderstood even some of the teachings of Yeshua, as I prefer to call him. And he taught heaven is at hand. He was really saying it's here. It's right here in your hand. But we think that it's someplace else or someplace we have to attain the right to go to after we die. And it took me the longest time, like you, to understand if God is everywhere present and everything that is God, that means it's me too. Yeah. I've never had to go outside of myself to connect with God because it's within.
I don't know if you remember this, but it must be 30 years ago. David Icke was ridiculed by the media for saying he was the son of God. That he was way ahead of his time.
Right.
He'd realized exactly who he was.
Yeah.
And of course, the mainstream media and what have you, they didn't want people knowing that. They wanted to think that we could all be controlled. And I often make mention of David because he set the foundations for what we're going through now. He's been on that journey for a very long time, a very, very long time. And he at the moment is exposing the Great Reset that we've became so close to getting into if the good guys hadn't wrestled control.
Right.
I'm still trying to work out when they started this, because I believe that they probably started it 15 years ago, maybe longer. Because if I knew about it 10 years ago, I wasn't the first.
Yeah, I learned about it in 2010.
That's 12 years ago. So the good guys have been working on dismantling the cabal and the deep state for at least 10, 12, 15 years, at least. Right. And the process has taken that long to do, to dismantle everything. And I can assure you from my personal connection to God that everything has already been dismantled, but we're living through a pantomime, playing out what has already happened.
Right.
So
yeah, and I've seen what the future looks like, and I know that some of the other people that you've had on your show are saying the same thing. And I think I mentioned last time I was on here, I'm writing a book that's being channeled from Metatron, and Metatron's showing me what the future looks like. So I've seen what it looks like. Yeah, it is amazing.
Yes,
this world is amazing. It's not going to be amazing for people who are addicted to their cell phones and addicted to their televisions and addicted, especially not for people who are addicted to fear, because there are people who would prefer, there really are people who will choose and prefer to be controlled, because then they don't have to make any decisions for themselves. And they don't have to be responsible for their own responses.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be some people who will choose to not be a part of this amazing new world we're creating. Even when all the information comes out. But the difference is, Charlie, that for the first time, humanity will be able to make conscious choice. Mm-hmm. And we, even though free will choice has been our prime directive since this planet was created, we haven't had conscious choice. We've mm-hmm. had what I call blind compliance. Mm-hmm. It's the dark side found a loophole in free will choice. Mm-hmm. And so about a year ago, what I was shown is that conscious choice is now going to replace regular free choice, mm-hmm. which means that every person will see all of the information. There isn't anybody that will be able to deny. Mm-hmm. They won't be able to deny any of it. Mm-hmm. But then they will make a conscious choice whether they want to stay in control mm-hmm. and victimization, mm-hmm. or whether they want their freedom.
And that is possible because we're moving into a quantum world of quantum consciousness. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't be possible in any other format where you can have two frequencies, if you like, or a parallel universe.
Right. We'll have two. Actually, was shown that about a year ago that we'll have two.
Yeah.
We're going to, because I kept asking what is this 5D and 3D? What does this look like? Well, the 3D has flatlined. I was shown that a couple mm-hmm. of months ago. 3D has flatlined. So everything that occurred in 3D is going to be exposed. Once mm-hmm. people are exposed to it, what exists is 4D and 5D. We get to 5D by navigating 4D. So a big part of what I teach is I teach people how to navigate 4D, because mm-hmm. nobody goes straight from 3 to 5.
No, correct.
You got to go through 4D. Sorry, people. That's just
it's horrible. It's horrible. I can assure you.
Only the lower part is. The lower 4D is difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
The higher 4D is fabulous, because that's where you're starting to see all that's going on, and it becomes exciting. You still have to process your life, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. and you still have to clean out the basement, as you put it. You still got to mm-hmm. get rid of your baggage. So you still have to process and that's what 4D does. That's where you do your life processing. But some people will stay in the lower 4D. It's dark there. Mm-hmm. And but those two worlds will coexist for a while, and eventually the lower 4D will eventually fade away, because those people just eventually transition off the planet, and then it won't exist anymore. But for a while, we will have these two very different realities.
And the one thing that I learned when transitioning through the fourth dimension was that if you can take pride out of it, then it's easy. Mm-hmm. But it's very easy to be conned, but it's very hard to admit you've been conned. That was the hard part mm-hmm. of understanding that you've been misled and accepting you've been misled by people you trusted. That's the lower 4D where the battle is. And once you get pride out of the way, then you can move it to the higher level of the fourth dimension, and with ease, once you get pride out of the way.
Yeah, I didn't have that issue so much. For me, it was more of, it was just this continual ahas of, oh my, that my parents weren't completely insane. Now was part of it. I realized that in some ways my parents were actually right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, a lot of the dogma they were incorrect about, but some of the beliefs I grew up with, which was, there were people in my community that were that insisted that taxes were illegal, and they didn't think they needed to pay their taxes. And I was like, these people are crazy. Oh, turns out they were right. Mm-hmm. You know, there were a lot of people in my community that did not vaccinate their kids because of chemicals that were in there. I thought they were crazy. Turns out that they were right. There were chemicals in the vaccines. And so some of this stuff that I grew up with, that's been part of the shocker for me, is, wow, my parents were actually right about some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And but there hasn't been a lot of arrogance in it. The most difficult part for me has been coming to terms with my own worthiness, because I was fed mm-hmm. unworthy for so long.
Yeah.
And so much of what I was brought up with was lack of self-esteem and lack of self-confidence. And that's been my greatest struggle, is learning how to have confidence in myself and learning how to have self-esteem and learning how to see myself as worthy. And then that's why that's one of the things that I teach now, because it's so important for us to get out of all that indoctrination that was created intentionally to keep us small.
The one thing my father used to say when we were younger that I thought he was mad, but he actually got it right, was that the television was a pipeline of filth into the house.
We weren't allowed to have TVs either, but what did my dad say about the television? Television rots children's minds.
Yeah, exactly.
He was right. Right?
He was absolutely right. But he also used to get us to stand in front of the mirror and say, "Oh, wretched man that I am," to sort of just bring us down to humility as a child, and rather than to allow yourself to grow. That oppression was not a good thing.
No,
there's many things when you give a child confidence. And there's a fabulous little video of the family surname is Zurbriggen, and they come from a place called Zermatt in Switzerland. And Pierman Zurbriggen was one of the greatest skiers in history and a wonderful human being. But his family, they're all skiers. When you see the little ones at 2 years old, flat out down a hill, to give a young child confidence at 2 years old, my wife and I watched about a handful of videos yesterday. They're so tiny, but the confidence they've got. And it's a little lesson that if you give a child confidence, how much they can achieve, even if they're 2 years old. A lot of English children would say, "Oh, no, you can't go on the ski slopes until you're 4 or 5. You're too small." But the Zurbriggen family, literally, I'm sure that they come out of the womb straight on skis. They start them at a ridiculously young age. And that's why they produce world champions, because they fall in love with nature. They don't have time to go on their iPads. They're coming down the hills on skis. And, first of all, the cold, fresh air, that in itself, forget the sport side, how healthy their bodies are, that they're working their bodies on a regular basis. Yes, flat out. But when to give a young child, and I've watched it many times in life, you see young children, you can see young children, some, because you and I recognize it immediately, are oppressed from a young age.
Yeah.
Some children look scared. You see fear in their eyes. But to see a young child with confidence and love in their eyes, not a better sight in the world.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of us didn't get that, like you, I was raised with the belief that a child's will needs to be broken.
Yes.
And that your spirit needs to be broken. And they did a really good job of breaking my spirit. And it took me a long time to put myself back together.
Yeah. You've done a bloody good job.
Well, thank you.
I'm super proud of you. You're like my little sister. You feel like a part of me because of what we've been through, and the battles and the traumas we've been through, and we both come out the other end. And you have an aura about you as well, it just resonates. It's a frequency that's very, very special. And at this time right now, people need people like Victoria to guide them through this and to connect.
Yeah. Well, and that's really what I'm here for, is to help people through that process, because it can be, especially the very beginning when people first have their awakening experience, whatever that is. And usually it's something quite traumatic.
Yes.
That's why a lot of people woke up in 2020, because this was very traumatic. But what I talk about the gifts of COVID quite a bit, because COVID has been, in a sense, although completely depending on your perspective, from one perspective, it's one of the worst things that's happened to the world, if that's what people are focusing on. But on another side, it's one of the best things that's ever happened to humanity, because it was a catalyst that started so many people waking up. And that's one of the best things that it's done for humanity. It's light using darkness. Actually, a video about this a couple of weeks ago about how Source uses darkness to grow more light. And that rather than focusing on the darkness, let's focus on the light that is what's growing from that. Because if you think about it, everything that exists in our reality starts in the darkness. Babies are grown in the darkness. Plants come from seeds that sit in the darkness, and they have to germinate for a while, and then they come up into the light. So the darkness is actually necessary for us to find our light. So, but a lot of people I noticed get stuck in the darkness. All they do is focus on all the crap that's happening and can't move past what the storm that's swirling around them and see this is actually a really good thing that's happening. And so when people say, well, nothing's happening, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I see all kinds of things happening.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not happening as fast as some people would like it to. And here's one of the things, Charlie, a lot of people don't understand is that if it all came out all at once, people do not have the coping skills to be able to handle it if it all came out all at once.
No, exactly. They would have mental breakdowns. They would have a complete collapse. It's feeding out there slowly. I've been down a couple of rabbit holes on this journey, especially to do with the children and the deep underground military bases. And I came back out, I'll be honest with you, Victoria, it was too much for me. And then when I started to realize that it was a bigger business than drugs, and I knew how big drugs was, I mean, it's massive. And I found it very, very difficult to even investigate that area. And then I did a very silly thing. I wanted photographic evidence, and that was stupid because when I got it, I wish I'd never seen it. And there's a lot of men out there who go, show me the evidence, because they're third dimensional thinking. I need to see it. I promise you, if you want to move in your life to a different level, you need to go within. And interestingly, yesterday, this was beautiful. There was an old lady, I forget whose mother it was, but about 10 years ago, she said, we need to rescue the children. They're underground. And she felt it 10 years ago. She said, and the son was like, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. She said, no, there are children underground that need rescuing. And that's a spiritual connection that gave her that information, like you have information. And there are many, many people out there that are getting information about things, and they're scared. They're scared to admit it. I was getting information as well that was coming to me very, very clearly, and I was scared how to deliver that information.
Right.
But God gives you the courage from within to share what he shared with you, and what you said earlier, it has been shared with you.
Right.
Then he looks at you to handle that the way, and he'll watch from within, not from without, from within. He'll watch and give you guidance. If you allow God to give you guidance, he'll give you the guidance and the wisdom to deliver the message accurately.
Well, and I think so. What's happening is that the more of us that have these conversations, the more we, in a sense, give other people permission to be able to speak their truth.
Yep.
And and I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and as we were leaving, ending the call, that's when I said, I'm an angelic walk-in, and she said, wow. She said, thank you for sharing that, because she said, I think she said that's giving me permission to share something that I've never told anybody either.
Yeah, no, I agree with that totally.
And so what's interesting about the whole walk-in is finding out there are so many of us here.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So many of us, and going to be more and more and more of us.
But this is the same in life in general, that people keep their secrets. And they keep things tight.
We don't know how they're going to be received.
Exactly.
Because 10 years ago, if I would have told somebody I was an angelic walk-in, they would have looked at me like I'd lost my mind and I needed to be locked up.
Yeah.
But now people understand that there are enough of us who are having these conversations that it's now starting to become part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's now starting to be acceptable to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, I'm going to love you and leave you and let you go to bed.
And you get on with your day.
Exactly. It's been wonderful to catch up with you as always. And
Likewise.
Sorry I was late.
Oh, it's fine. I wondered if I woke you up. I was kind of laughing. I was like, I wonder if Charlie's got his shirt from here on and he's still in his PJs.
I'm in my shorts. I'm in my shorts and shirt. But no, for me, I love getting up in the mornings. I love the mornings. But no, there's no problem at all. But always a pleasure to see you. And sending
always,
you
likewise. So I'm going to be on again in 4 weeks. So put that on your calendar. And we'll have these regular chats, because I think this is really good for us to get caught up and talk about what's going on in the world from more what I call grounded spirituality, and people need to hear that everything that's happening right now really is good.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really exciting as well for those people who know what's going on. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Sending you much love.
Likewise. Good to see you.
Good night's sleep.